It's so catchy. It was one of the best decisions we made coming into the second 100. Welcome to episode 102 of the Wise Guy Sports Show. I am one of your hosts, Jim Crenity, and I'm going to bring in my partner, the host with the most, Mr. Mike Martinez. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, and yes, that is one of the best decisions we've ever made. Because, quite honestly, as much as I love our original, and I've watched my 3-year-old headbang to it, which again is something that just needs to be seen live, I love the vibe. I do. I love the vibe.
And now that I've actually attributed it properly, hopefully we don't get another copyright notice, but at least it's not a strike. And I'm actually kind of stunned that I didn't get a strike for on my channel for when I went live on Friday night for the new Spirit Box CD, streaming all
Oh,
47 minutes of it.
oh, nice.
So my video quality came out like crap for some reason. So hopefully this won't be a reflection of that in the on demand. But Mike, we got a what in the hell? Why did they decide to do that to us this weekend?
I think they did it this weekend because next weekend we're going to be going crazy on one sport. So, as you have mentioned, we have, well, I believe the word is a fuck ton to get to. Let's have at it.
It's the three biggest topics in the world of sports from the last week. Get ready for the Wise Guys hat trick.
Huh? Right?
I'm you blink 5 minutes later, you blink and something else happens.
So let's start with your boy and Mr. Haley Stein. I mean, Josh Allen. Gets $330 million extension. Someone put there he's making $100 a second.
6 years, $330 million, 330 mil extension, as you mentioned, 250 mil guaranteed. It is the largest contract in league history for a
Don't
guy
get me wrong.
coming off an MVP campaign and was the runner-up for MVP the 2 years previous.
Yeah, he's definitely not that anybody should be making this much money playing a sport. I think you and I are in agreement on that. But if we're putting those kind of numbers somewhere, and he's earned it. He's only got one thing left to do, and I wish him luck. I really, you know that. I hope that they get a chance to do it. But it's the second move I want to discuss that is going to make both of us want to puke.
Because it was the, I mean, you said it yourself, and I'm not going to try and sound like a Buffalo homer here, but they were the busiest team in terms of news in the last 72 hours, because not only does that happen, earlier this afternoon they cut Von Miller, freeing up 13 million in cap space, and then also on Saturday re-signed Greg Rousseau to a 4-year, $80 million extension with 54 million guaranteed, as Rousseau's actually become one of the top 10 defensive linemen in the NFL.
He has, and he's played well. He's played very well. Von Miller's on the back end. Let's be very honest. Von Miller's on the back end of the career. He has been an amazing player for a lot of years, and he'll be serviceable for somebody for this year. But getting Josh Allen that money, re-signing Rousseau, two things the Bills absolutely needed to do. Real quick, just tell everybody it's 39-35 Cavaliers, 9:24 left in the second quarter in Milwaukee.
And they also re-signed Khalil Shakir, earlier in the week since we came to you guys last. So it's, quickly turning into one of Josh's favorite targets. So we haven't seen a whole lot with the Bills of going out and signing guys and bringing guys in, because the new 2025 calendar starts tomorrow for the NFL. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these moves getting made, because the teams need to get cap compliant I want to say by midnight tonight or something of that nature.
That's what I think it is too. Cap compliant for the 2024 cap. 2025 cap starts tomorrow.
Right.
But it's the second one that's going to make you and I want to vomit.
Do we save that one for last, though? Because we had some other pretty decent meals.
For last.
What's
We're
that?
saving miles for last.
Okay. So
the second one is the Squealers.
Yes, and it was announced within the last 2 hours that Pittsburgh has traded a second-round pick and also swapped a 6 and a 7 to Seattle for wide receiver DK Metcalf.
And have immediately signed him to a 5-year, $150 million extension. Let me say this. This move was made because of what's going to happen. Because, well, first of all, because what happened last week, of course, see Geno Smith get traded to the Raiders to be reunited with Pete Carroll. But Justin Fields is toying with going on free agency, and I think they brought him in to leave Justin Fields as the starter in Pittsburgh. You give Justin Fields DK Metcalf and that fucking offensive line, you take Pickens and make him a 2? I don't care what the Ravens do.
And also with Najee Harris in the backfield.
I didn't even get to Najee. I don't care what the Ravens do. Pittsburgh is immediately the favorite to win the AFC North. Immediately.
You still kind of have to figure out what's going on with their defense because, yes, TJ Watt is a top 5 defensive player in all of football at any position. If you look, I would say if you put the Mount Rushmore of pass rushers up there, he's on the mountain. Him, Myles Garrett,
Aiden Hutchinson.
You could make an argument for Aiden Hutchinson, but certainly his name. Why am I drawing a blank now? Dallas.
On Nick Bosa?
Micah Parsons.
Oh, and I would. You know what? I wouldn't put Hutchinson there. I put Nick Bosa as the 4th name to go with Parsons and Garrett and TJ.
I would say it's contingent right now on well, yeah, Aiden Hutchinson would definitely be up there if he can stay healthy. Right now, if he can stay healthy, he's easily up there. But right now, you got to look at some other guys. Does Rousseau move himself into that conversation this year if Hutchinson doesn't recover at 100%? You know what? The one guy who's going to fill this out right now is the one guy that we actually still have to talk about. Max Crosby re-ups with the Raiders for 3 years, $106 million with $91.5 guaranteed. Max Crosby has the 3rd most sacks in the NFL in the last 3 years.
Listen, they're building something to try and win quickly in Las Vegas because their coach is 104. I find it hilarious that the Raiders and the University of North Carolina have coaches the same age that went against each other in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's. And yet, what's funny is that their talent gets younger and younger.
Listen, Pete Carroll was a good coach when he was with the Jets in New England too. He just didn't have the requisite talent around him to win. I think the best thing that could have happened to him was going to USC for a few years, becoming a recruiting juggernaut and paying the shit out of his players. But that notwithstanding, it set up the Seattle move, and we all know how great he was in Seattle. Minus, give Beast Mode the fucking ball, Pete, for Christ's sake.
And you know, as the Raiders now improve, because it's minimal with the Geno move, because it only ends up being what was it, a 3rd round pick?
I think so. It wasn't a high draft pick at all.
Yeah, it was a 3 to Seattle for Geno, who's 34 and going into the final year of that contract. So it's so obviously you got to figure Seattle is, you know, their pancake eating motherfucker GM right now is basically starting to load up on picks and change at this point to be able to go take a run at, you know, a quarterback next year, because now your starting quarterback and your number 1 weapon as receiver are now out. So Seattle's got to be in full teardown mode, at least for 2025.
If you'll excuse me, I believe you've earned this. By the way, their number one receiver is pretty good. You know who it is now, right?
If it's a Buckeye, he's out. The
It's JSN.
because he's got nobody to throw to.
Well, yeah, but no, JSN's been good. He's not DK Metcalf. Who was the other one? Not Tyler Lockett. That was when Russ was there. Who was the other his partner in crime?
In Seattle?
Yeah.
Right now, I'm looking up Seattle's starting quarterback right now is Sam Howell.
They're going to draft a quarterback.
Jalen Darden.
Okay. Two good young receivers.
Yeah.
Who's their head coach? Is that Mike? Is that Mike McCoy? Was the DC in St. Louis, I think?
Mike McDonald.
Mike McDonald.
Not to be confused with the great singer from the 1990s.
What a fool. 80s. Dude, he was
who
in the
also,
Doobie Brothers
who
in
also
the
had a
70s.
who also had a resurgence the last decade.
That's because everybody listens to his music and doesn't realize he's white.
I need to add the Rick roll to this if we don't get the copyright strike.
You do that, that'll be awesome. I mean,
It might be ready next week because we might be Rick rolling a bunch with next week's target.
especially with the thing, with the brackets.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams lands in Los Angeles with the Rams.
You almost said St. Louis. I know you
I
did.
said St. Louis. Dude, how many times have I said San Diego for the fucking Chargers?
Yeah.
Oh, so Devontae Adams goes to the Rams, who are now in LA. The LA Chargers cut Joey Bosa. Put your thinking cap on and close your eyes for a second. San Francisco signs him and sticks him on the other end with his brother.
We could see it, but Devontae goes to the Rams after being advised last week that he was not going to be re-signed by the Jets on a 2-year, $46 million deal with $26 million guaranteed. And we talked about it last week. Matt Stafford originally, negotiates with Rams brass about possibly seeking a trade, and then signs a 2-year contract extension. We saw it with Lamar Jackson. We're going to see it with the biggest name on the board, not named Josh Allen, that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But some of the other major names that were released today, not only was Nick Bosa released, Von Miller was released. Zadarius Smith, after his cup of coffee being traded at the deadline from the Browns to the Lions, was announced that he wasn't going to be re-signed. And it was actually namely came down to his $2 million roster bonus, I read. And Gus Edwards was released by the Chargers as well.
Well, I mean, Dobbins had a good year. He was relatively healthy. I honestly think they're going to draft running back. Wouldn't be shocked to see one of the Buckeye backs there with the way
Let me throw a name out for you because I don't think he's first-round material, but if he slips a little bit, could you maybe see a Cam Scatterbo?
Oh, Harbaugh would just be licking his chops to get Scatterbo.
A big bruising back like that?
And if you pair him with Dobbins, that's a nice little 1-2.
Exactly. And namely his downfield running will be able to take the heat off of Herbert and let that passing game open up a little bit more.
Well, that and he throws the ball better than Herbert does too, so I told you I'm gonna talk some shit tonight. Nick Bolton with the Chiefs stays 3 years, $45 million. Harold Landry with the Patriots, 3 years, $43.5. Jamie and Sherwood signs with the Jets. Why'd you do that? 3 years, $45. Ernest Jones, the fourth, 3 years, $33 to Seattle. Defensive tackle Jaron Reed, 3 years, 25 to Seattle. And the Vikings keep, apparently, Sam Darnold's favorite back, because it sounds like they're going to sign Sam Darnold long term for some big money. 2 years, $20 million for Aaron Jones.
Jared Stidham signs 2 years, $12 million as the backup to Bo Nix in Denver.
That's not bad.
The Saints also with a pretty significant move, restructuring and converting $28.75 million of Derek Carr's 2025 salary and $10 million of his roster bonus into a signing bonus, and it now frees them up with $30.9 million in cap room. Considering you look at the two teams that were the most over the cap, it was the Saints and the Browns, who had two of the worst seasons of anybody in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
And the Browns, it's not exactly what we're going to talk about. We are not going to dwell on this, but they restructured Deshaun Watson yet again. It frees up $36 million in cap space. So the Browns go from 23 over the cap to 13 million under it. And we're going to come back to that here in just a second here, because the move that was made does not affect the cap for this year. So the Browns actually do have some leeway, and they still have some decisions to make. Joel Bitonio has announced that he's going to come back, but now what happens with Greg Newsome, what happens with Denzel Ward, what happens with Jack Conklin? So they've actually got some big money names out there that they actually could be getting some calls about. But there was one piece that's now going to stay, and that we're bearing the lead, but there's other names that we can talk about here.
Let's talk about how the New York Giants are going to sign Aaron Rodgers. I'd rather play the Paisan.
I was just going to mention, it's of Dr. Vinny Boombots, under center right now.
He's on the roster. He's on the roster. He's the only quarterback they have right now.
Right.
But it looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to keep his house in New Jersey and just move over to a shittier team. There's scuttlebutt Daniel Jones is going to end up in Indianapolis to compete with Anthony Richardson,
which is definitely needed.
I agree, and I think that's a great landing place for him, especially with the running game and the actual wide receiver room. And oh my God, a fucking offensive line.
You think about it, you put two guys who need to resurrect their careers badly in Richardson, and I can't believe we're saying this about Richardson after he played gangbusters the first half of his rookie season, then gets hurt, struggles mightily last year, ends up losing his starting job to Joe Flacco, 427-year-old Joe Flacco at that point.
Whoa, 425. He's not that old yet. You're off a couple years, James. I'm sorry.
But Rodgers to the Giants still kind of makes sense, just because you figure he's only got 1 year left. Go someplace. He's not going to be a contender. He's not going to start for a contender. Let him go there. And quite honestly, if you think about it, we can. A lot of the scuttlebutt going around is that you could actually see possibly the Giants move up with Cleveland to 2. And draft Shedeur Sanders if there's and right now it's really contingent as to where the Titans are going to go at 1, because if the Titans go 1 with Cam Ward, you're going to see the Browns they've got their pick of the litter. Do they go Travis Hunter and possibly move Denzel Ward? Do they go do they go with Abdul Carter and put him on the opposite line of our last subject here in this segment? Do they, I don't see them really wanting, Shedeur, even though he talked with them, because they've already got one nutcase and media circus under center in their locker room, and they don't want to bring that back.
If I may, there is a difference between nutcase and media circus and walking free felon. It's a thin line, but it is a line. And if a rookie played like that trash bag did last year, you could say he was a rookie. So I wouldn't say no to Shador yet.
He
I wouldn't
can't
say
read a
yes to
defense.
Shador
He
yet.
can't throw a deep ball.
So
The problem is when you got Jerry Jeudy, and also you're going to get Cedric Tillman back healthy next year, two guys who can stretch the field. You want to be able to take the lid off that defense. So you've got to have a quarterback that's going to be able to throw that can opener.
but here's my question: Jerry Jeudy had the best year of his career this year, right?
He
Yes,
did.
because DTR and Jameis are the most accurate fucking throwers of the football on the planet.
But the difference
You don't
is
need to
but
do
the
that.
difference is look at how good that they were with, you know, Watson, for all of his troubles, still can actually throw. Still has a cannon of an arm, you know, even though it was his throwing shoulder that he was coming back off of an injury with. Jameis Winston still throws a really good deep ball. When you're 6'4", you should be able to, you know, when you're still in your early 30s at that point. DTR, not necessarily, but again, you got a quarterback who can actually get the ball there. Shador is not that guy. Cam Ward certainly is, but not Shador. Or, you know, the possibility of, um, yeah, I'm not enamored with a Jackson Dart. I don't think that, you know, Will Howard has the same level of a rocket arm, but he does read a defense very well. Um, you know, but that would be my concern with Howard, is that if you're going to actually bring in somebody like him or Shador, whether it's at 233 or I'm trying to remember, I think it's 92 in the third round, you got
Yeah,
you know, you got to actually do you really want to pull those guys in after they both came off of career years until Cedric Tillman got hurt, of course, and you know, start playing dink and dunk again.
well, I don't think so much you have to play dink and dunk because one thing Will Howard can do is throw the intermediate ball really well. Not only with pace but also with touch. I think you saw that not so much during the season because it's like they almost had the clamps on him. When they took the clamps off him in the playoff, he threw the ball really well. Um, in suspect conditions in Columbus against Tennessee, and then of course you had the game in California, which was in good conditions, and 2 games in a dome. But he threw the ball well. The one thing I like about Howard is he loves spreading the ball around. So, you know, it's going to be 6-1, half dozen other. We'll do more draft talk as we get closer to the draft. But let's get into the elephant in the room. And I would like to know your opinion on this before I give mine, because I'm going to be a bit of a dick.
There was originally a part of me when I heard it come down, and I was at the grocery store when it happened. I actually got told that by by the girl and her boyfriend, you know, in line behind me when, you know, when the line was, you know, up the aisle and they were waiting on another cashier to open another line. So we're not going anywhere. So everyone's checking their phones. Um, but I originally sat back and I thought, how is that going to work? Because you free up 36 million in cap space, you get cap compliant, and now you do this, and then the light bulb goes off and says, um, "Oh wait, it doesn't take effect for 2 more years, and we'll rip the Band-Aid off." Miles Garrett, after a very tumultuous last 3 weeks in the news, re-signs and re-extends with the Cleveland Browns for 4 years, $160 million, $123.5 million guaranteed, and it makes him the highest paid non-quarterback player in NFL history. Uh, so again, this would take effect in 2027, where Deshaun Watson $60 million comes off the books. So you're getting at least $20 million in relief on top of what the cap's going to go up each of those next few years. So from a business standpoint, it's brilliant. But there's part of me that I'm trying to think of who flinched first, because um we saw this just 2 years ago with Lamar Jackson. We've seen certain players in the NFL request trades and then re-up. Matt Stafford didn't so much request one, but the team actually said to his agent he's got free range to go and explore a trade, and then he resigns for 2 more years. So it's not something that we haven't seen before, and also certainly it's not foreign in recent history. It does leave a very sour taste in my mouth with how ugly it got in the last couple of days as it was announced that Garrett was looking to seek a meeting, an actual sit down meeting with Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam. Haslam told Garrett, no, go talk to Andrew Berry. And then they mashed this whole thing out within 48 hours, apparently. So what in the hell happened to where there was such a disconnect where it seemed where it was between Berry and Garrett, even if it was Garrett's agent? I don't know how much interaction Haslam had with this, especially if he actually said, no, you need to go talk to Berry, in the back end in the last 48 hours with this. And now this actually gets hammered out when they throw extra money at him. So what changed? Who blinked?
I think the Browns blinked. And I'm going to say this. I love Myles Garrett. I said in my blog that Myles Garrett was the guy who got the reboot started, the number 1 overall pick, the generational pass rusher. This is the stupidest fucking move the Cleveland Browns could have made. They need a full rebuild. They don't have the quarterback right, and quite honestly, there's no quarterbacks in this draft that are going to get it right. You have an offensive line that now will have to go through a full rebuild without a good offensive line coach, because I think Petonio is going to retire.
I mean, after this year, probably. You also still have to figure out if DeJuan Jones is going to come back healthy, and then and quite honestly, be able to rebound after playing through an injury most of last year.
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns have more holes than my Mets roster right now, and we're going to get into that in the blast. This was dumb. This was absolutely fucking stupid. This was the Browns being the fucking Browns. How do I think this got done? I'm going to be honest with you. I think they told him, Deshaun's fucking gone. He's never playing again. We're going to find a quarterback. We're going to get this thing right. And because the rhetoric about Deshaun was always, we're going to get him healthy so he can play. And I'm sure that's why Miles wanted the fuck out of town. So I'd want the fuck out of town. Piece of shit. Anyway, this was dumb. This was absolutely dumb. They could have had a rebuild done in 3 years with the 2 first-round picks they could have gotten for him. And do I think it's great that he's now going to go from Cleveland to Canton? Yes, that's amazing. Is he going to set all these records in the Browns record book and be the man on defense for the Cleveland Browns like Jim Brown is the man on offense for the Cleveland Browns? Absolutely. I think it's fucking amazing. From an organizational standpoint, this was fucking dumb. This was knockdown, drag out dumb. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised great value Jerry Jones took a step back, because he's the one that fucked him in the first place.
Do you think great value Jerry Jones, at this point, do you think that – go ahead.
We got to call him GV double J.
You got to do the double J strut.
I knew you were going to do that too. We're so juvenile.
But do you actually think that Haslam? I don't think it's throwing money at him the way that they did with Watson, because he was already here, and you could definitely tell Miles loves Cleveland. It's I think one of a couple of things happened here, and I don't think that they're all concurrent. But I think it was more so that, Miles was looking to get paid. Absolutely. He still had 2 years left on the deal. But I think now that the draft is coming through and the combine is there, I think they've got their idea and they've got their game plan of what they want to do with two. Um, and even if they actually wanted to move up to one to be able to get Ward, it would only cost them flipping ones and then maybe giving up, you know, a 4, maybe a 6, and then maybe like a 2 next year or something like that to be able to get everything to balance out. I don't think they'd actually have to give up another number 1 and be without a number 1 for 4 out of 5 years here. But I think you're right. I think it was something where they've said that he's under contract. He's extremely unlikely to play. I mean Deshaun Watson. I think it's extremely unlikely that he will see the field in Cleveland in 2025. So they're not only going to be able to have that cap relief, but also if they rule him out for the full year, that money comes back to them, and then they can actually use the insurance policy to pay it off. It's not like what happens in pro wrestling or something like that, where somebody actually takes off for an injury or something like that, or whatnot, and they tack time on the end of your contract, so you serve it. This actually wouldn't happen. If Watson actually misses all of 2025, it's not like they tack that on to 20, at the end of 26 and make him still under contract for 27. It's just in a completely lost year, and they only have that one more year to worry about. So after next year, if they rule him out, they can flat out cut him, 1 year from today when you need to get cap compliant. They could pay that $40 million out and just be done with it. They can negotiate a buyout. They can actually make whatever kind of moves they want if Watson's going to come back healthy, because now you're going to have your bridge quarterback, whether it's I'm just going to throw names out there. Whether you back up the truck for Sam Darnold to make things work, whether it's a Kirk Cousins on a veteran minimum, whether you're actually bringing in a journeyman, if you bring Jameis back for half a year or something like that. Again, I'm just spitballing. I'm not saying any of these are going to happen. And you basically have Ward, Sanders, Howard, Dart, Ewers, whoever it might be, as your rookie coming into that room, because DTR is going to be out. They had to have actually given him an idea as to where they want to go here with this, because I do think that you're going to see Nick Chubb brought back, on a 1-year reduced rate deal at this particular point. You're going to have a lot of holes to fill. I understand that, yes, the 2 extra draft picks would be very nice to bring in, and especially if he goes, then you also could have maybe seen Denzel want to go as well, and you could have picked up an extra one. So you could have actually had 3 first-rounders and picked up 2 more for next year.
You probably had 4. Depending where you landed, you could have had 4. If you send Miles somewhere, let's say they would send him to the Detroit Lions, you would have had 2. You would have had the Lions pick. And if you send Denzel somewhere, you got the 3rd pick in the first round this year. And probably 1 or 2 next year on top of yours.
And then essentially you've also got you've got 33, which is the first pick of the second round. So you got 3, and then technically it's almost like it's a 4th, except it's on a reduced rate. So I understand that. But the aspect that I'm actually coming from, where I like the move, and they kind of pulled his punk card a little bit, is that it wasn't so much like Deshaun. Deshaun was not going to come until they guaranteed all this money. Miles, you could definitely tell that he kind of wanted to stay, but if you look at things right now, they can fix the offensive line. They can bring guys in with the way that guys are getting cut. They can makeshift this because of the fact that this offensive line, for being as dominant as they were under Callahan, got very old very quick, because Jack Conklin was the linchpin with that, because Conklin has not played a full season really since he's been a Cleveland Brown. So you always have to actually find guys to plug in, plug there. The weapons are, I think, arguably the weapons are there. You saw really good flashes out of Jerome Ford, they move on from Naeem Himes, who they really didn't have the whole year, which was actually going to be one of their prized free agent signings last year. You've got a decent receiver room. You've got, Njoku, David Njoku, your tight end, and Blake Whiteheart came on pretty well as well last year. So when you look at the front four, you can get some work there. If you bring Abdul Carter in there to play on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, my God, is that going to be dangerous? Because it's very much like what's going on in Detroit with Aiden Hutchinson, and who they end up, who did they bring in last year?
Za'Darius.
Okay, well, and now Za'Darius was moved out, but didn't actually Detroit get somebody else?
I can't remember. You might be right.
Let me look up their depth chart real quick.
While you're looking that up,
but if you can get JOK healthy after that neck stinger, because that was a huge concern. My dad brought something up as well. It's like, could you maybe take a flyer in the third round, assuming he slips that far? And it would pain me to kind of say this as a Buckeye hater, but Jack Sawyer, because you can put him down, but you can also drop him into coverage.
Yeah, Sawyer is a name I think. I honestly, if I'm the Browns, Tui Mola is a guy. I love Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer would be a better pick for fans because he not only is he a Buckeye, he's an Ohio kid, like the newly retired Sam Hubbard. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this with the Browns. Today just pissed me off to no end. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful he's there. When Deshaun goes, he will probably be the jersey that I purchase. Because
it was Josh Paschal.
Okay. Oh.
Even though he only had 2 sacks and 15 tackles last year, he was their 2022 second-round pick.
Yeah, but you have to account for him, and that means Hutchinson gets less attention because you have to account for him.
Right, because there's also still DJ Reader, there's Ayla McNeil, who actually ended last season hurt.
Yeah. But going back to the Browns real quick, today pissed me off because I really thought they had a chance to actually reset the franchise and do it the right way. Not with, we're going to lose for a few years to get the first pick. No, you had a chance to trade someone who wanted out. Majority of him wanted out. I don't think if all of him wanted out, he signs his contract. But a majority of him wanted out. You had a guy coming off a defensive player of the year 2 years ago. Arguably should have won it again. 14 sacks every year. There is not a single team that wouldn't have offered you the fucking farm for him. You had a chance to rebuild this franchise now, and you blew it. You absolutely fucking blew it.
The only I don't want to say I'm going to punch a hole in your theory here, but he said he didn't want to be a part of another rebuild. Well, you were 3-14 last year. You can't get much lower, and with now the extra cap room and all of the picks that you have in the draft, in addition to some of the other, moves that you could end up making, some of the other cuts you could end up making, some of the other trades that you could end up making after midnight, and possibly still acquire picks if you move a couple of the stars that we've talked about. I don't want to say it may not be a rebuild. I'm not saying that they're that close to getting back to playoff contention, but it's not going to be. I mean, if 2025 is a wash and they win maybe 6 games, even though they've got a pretty brutal schedule, but you actually see progress, you can take that step in 2027, when you've actually, when guys like Bitonio and Conklin have been moved out, you've actually got Myles now going to be 32 at that point, playing out the last year of that contract, knowing the extension kicks in and just keeps getting better into his athletic prime. You've got the moves that you need to decide on between Ward, Greg Newsome, Delpit. So you've got the potential to turn this thing around. It's not going to be in a year like how it was back in 2023, but you got to figure within a 2-year window, And the fact that you've got a lot of good talent there, Carolina stinks. New Orleans stinks. Arizona stinks. These are the teams that you know are going to be bad. The Browns right now have took one move, made a very questionable move 3 years ago, and it set them back. Now there's a light at the end of that tunnel, and the second time I'm going to quote that Metallica song on this show, and it's a freight train coming your way. And that freight train means that freight train is going to run him over and run him out of town, and the healing can begin. And watch what happens when it does. I'm very optimistic about this. I understand that the teardown would be nice because you're going to stink probably in 2025, but you're not going to be as bad as you were this year. When the fact of you won 3 games and 2 of those wins were nail biters, and you weren't in most of those losses, but and it's certainly not a favorable schedule, but you've got a cornerstone now. You've got some uncertainty with some injuries, and once you start getting some clarity here through the summer, and the Browns Super Bowl is coming up here in 6 weeks with the draft, but that's going to be a lot. That's going to go a long way towards the healing process, because it's now going to start giving optimism, because the last time you had a pick this high for a quarterback was Baker, and immediately changed the culture once he got in there. And you're not going to have a coaching staff that's going to hold him back like Mr. 1-31 did.
Here's why they should have done the full-scale rebuild. Very simple. It's not for all the things I can say about Andrew Berry, he is a very good football guy. When left to his own devices, he has made very good draft picks. He has made very savvy free agent moves, and he has put together teams that have been playoff contenders for several years when he's been hamstrung by certain things. Most notably, that team in 2023 that went to the playoffs being hamstrung by the worst contract in pro sports history. You don't have a fucking moron doing the rebuild this time. It would get done right. Remember, Andrew Berry was in Philly when they rebuilt Philly, and what they do, they're coming off 2 Super Bowl wins and a 3rd appearance in the last 6 years. Or last 8 years, excuse me. So nearly half the time in that time period, they've been in the Super Bowl. Stefanski's a good coach. He's got a good offensive scheme. You had a chance to reset this franchise for the next 15 years to be one of the upper echelon franchises just by letting a guy who was pissy get the fuck out of town. They're not going to do it now. Listen, and now you and I have flipped spots from what we were last week, busting chops about the Cavs against Boston. I am now Dougie Downer. This was stupid. And you are Orenthal optimistic. Well played. Look, I'm sorry. This is going to bite them in the ass. And you and I are going to be on here next year, and we're going to be talking about a team that's got a top 5 pick again. And then we're going to be on here the year after that about a team that's got a top 10 pick because they're going to be marginally better. You make this deal and another couple of dominoes fall, 1 or 2 years you're going to be dog shit. Nothing new. The year 3, look the fuck out. They don't have that now. They don't. Because they've got a really tough choice to make. And I don't think they go quarterback at number 2. I don't think they can. I don't think there's somebody there that's going to reset the franchise. I don't think there's anybody there with the mentality Baker had at the number 1 pick. They need to take, if Carter's there, they need to take Carter, stick him on the other end with Miles, and just turn this defense into a fucking wrecking machine.
66-58, 9:45 to go in the 3rd quarter. Cavs ahead.
Speaking of Myles Garrett and his money, the part owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum of you in this one, and that's not the first time that's happened today. But I hope it works out. I do, Jim. I really do. I'm just not convinced because GV Double J is going to fuck this up somehow.
Let's actually see. I'm very interested to see. I'm wondering if it'll make more sense and get both of us to kind of calm down a little bit, because they didn't disclose the terms. They didn't break down how the money's going to work over the next 4 years with the extension. I don't think we're going to see that for a couple of days. The numbers for how it actually worked out did, but not the breakdown of the 4 years. We're talking, 27, 28, 29, and 30. But I can understand where the move got made. Let's actually see how it breaks down and if it tiers at all, and also see where this could potentially leave them cap wise if we're going to speculate over the next few years with what they're going to be able to do. What kind of flexibility is it going to have with them? Because we know the cap's going to go up, but let's also see what happens in the next few days with some of those other guys that we've actually talked about here. And maybe we could be changing our tune by the time, by this time next month.
It's possible. It's very possible. But we're 47 minutes into one topic.
And the delightful sounds of the Florida Panthers goal horn is because the NHL trade deadline, as we're talking about movers and shakers on the gridiron, on turf and in grass, now let's actually look at what happened on the ice, because we had 3 blockbuster moves and a whole host of others come down on Thursday by 4 p.m. Eastern time. And the first name that's on there is the one that nobody expected. Michael, you were the one that sent this to me.
And here's the thing. Neither of us are Brad Marchand fans. I have an aunt who lives in Massachusetts. She is a Bruins fan. Doesn't swear much. Did about this. But when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. It makes sense from the Panther side because Matty Tkachuk, is it Matty Tkachuk that's out for the year?
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk is out through the remainder of the regular season. And the terms of the deal was Brad Marchand, the captain of the Boston Bruins, who's currently right now dealing with an oblique injury of his own, is going to be out for the next couple of weeks, was moved to the Florida Panthers for a conditional 2027 second round pick. That pick becomes, and where it's conditional is if the Panthers make the finals and Marchand is part of that roster, that becomes a number 1 pick.
So it's a pretty decent return. But my question is, why?
Marchand, the big talk was that Marchand was in the final year of his contract, a very hefty contract, and was trying to negotiate, and the Bruins would not budge on the money. Now, let's keep in mind that Marchand, yes, here's the funny thing before I actually get back to my train of thought. Do you realize now you've got the 2 biggest instigators in the NHL that are going to be possibly playing on the same fucking line when the playoffs start?
Mm-hmm. They're trying to build the Hansons.
It pretty much works. Can we dig Sean Avery up and suit him up at center?
Real quick. Sean Avery's on Shoresy.
Sean Avery can lick my nuts.
That's basically what Shoresy tells him.
But again, I think it really came down to money. But Brad Marchand is just a couple of years removed from being a top 10 player in this league. When Brad Marchand is healthy, Brad Marchand is still a top 25 player in the NHL. Boston is not having the kind of year that a lot of teams expected them to have. But Boston, for as great as they were for a lot of years, has really come back down to earth. They are sitting 29, 28, and 8. They are 66 points. They are right now, as it stands, the Bruins are sitting, they're only 3 points out of a final wild card spot, but they're 2-6-2 in their last 10, and their goal differential is a -28. So at this point, The fact that Charlie Coyle got moved as well on Thursday, it's got to be time. Every team's going to go through a rebuild. We saw Detroit do it for a number of years, and the Red Wings have got themselves in playoff contention. Finally, the Sabres are still dead last and seem to unload everyone. And we're going to talk about the Sabres here in just a second with the second name that's on that list in terms of a blockbuster move. But everyone goes through rebuilds, and it just unfortunately looks like it's the cycle where it's Boston. Pittsburgh essentially is in it right now, and there were rumors that Sidney Crosby was going to get moved, as a perennial Hall of Famer, because he's only got a couple of years left in his tank as well. It's like Pittsburgh right now is sitting second last in the conference. If Buffalo hadn't lost 6 in a row, Pittsburgh would be dead last in the conference.
You can't trade Sidney Crosby. You can't. I think no matter how bad or how good they're playing, if you trade Sidney Crosby, the city of Pittsburgh will fucking riot.
Yeah, but, Pittsburgh's going to have to start thinking about life after Sid and Gino. Everyone does it.
I'm not saying they can't think about life after Sid and Gino. I'm sorry. The cat's got into my hat. It's like freaking hair everywhere. I'm not saying you shouldn't prepare for life after Sid and Gino. I'm saying while they're there and being productive, if you trade them, that city will rise up from the depths of that dirty ass river and try and kill you.
And here's the other ironic thing about the Panthers. When we came to you guys last week, it was Toronto on top of that division, and how we actually had talked about the Lightning, the Panthers, and the Leafs had all won at least 4 in a row. The Panthers have now won 6 in a row, and they've put 4 points of distance between them and Toronto, who's lost 3 in a row. So the Florida Panthers, even without Matty Tkachuk, and the fact that they're still not going to be able to have their shiny new toy in Brad Marchand, for a couple of more weeks here, got hot and took over, first place in the Atlantic Division. They're still not going to catch Washington, who's won 4 in a row. Carolina's come on red hot as of late. They've won 4 in a row, but they're still 12 points back. But how does Florida just keep doing this?
Sucker trade partners. I mean, if Boston's going to go on a rebuild, Marchand's the obvious one to go. I mean, that's about it. Of all the big names that went, he was the only one that was a shocker. I think everybody else thought Cousins, especially, from what you were telling me. But Buffalo's trying to sell everybody off anyway, right?
I mean, pretty much. Dylan Cousins has really not. He was one of Buffalo's kind of core, top 10 picks. Cousins, Jack Eichel, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin. But the difference is Dahlin has played himself into a Norris Trophy contender. Owen Power is still trying to find his way. They've got Bowen Byron, on defense as well, who, even though they didn't draft him, he was part of a recent trade that actually ended up coming back, and he was a former top 10 pick and looks like he's going to be a stalwart for them. But Cousins moves to the Ottawa Senators along with defenseman Dennis Gilbert and a 2026 too. And Ottawa sends back defenseman Jacob Bernard Docker. But the prized possession here for the Sabres coming back is center Josh Norris, who, when healthy, is a potential 30-goal scorer.
Which is something they've needed for several years.
I mean, they have that right now in Tage Thompson, but you can't put it all on TNT.
Dynamite.
I mean, those are his initials.
I know.
And I'm sorry to kind of gloss over Cousins here as I'm trying to get through this segment because we still got one more to go and we're coming up on an hour. Fan favorite for the New York Islanders, Brock Nelson, is moved to Colorado with defenseman Oliver Kylington and a forward prospect and a 2020. Brock Nelson goes to Colorado. Colorado sends back defenseman Oliver Kylington, a forward prospect, a 2026 conditional first rounder, a 2028 conditional third rounder, and then the Islanders end up flipping Kylington to Anaheim for a late round pick.
Are the Islanders are in it, right?
Islanders right now are sitting where did they go? They are at 65 points right now. They are 5-5 in their last 10, and they are 4 points out of the final playoff spot right now.
No, they're going for it. They think they're close enough.
I mean, Ottawa making the move for Dylan Cousins makes sense because Ottawa right now has supplanted the Rangers and the Wings and are sitting at 69 points in that final wild card spot right now.
It makes sense.
Elsewhere, Pittsburgh sends Luke Shen to Winnipeg for a 2026 second-round pick and a 2027 fourth-round pick. And they also reacquire Brandon Tanev from the Seattle Kraken, who they lost to the Kraken in the expansion draft for a 2027 second-round pick. The ironic thing is that there was talk that both Shen brothers were going to get moved, but the Blues retain their captain, Braden Shen, as the Blues right now are still relatively in it. St. Louis didn't do anything and are sitting 1 point out of the last playoff spot in the West and are one of the hottest teams in the league right now at 7-1-2 in their last 10.
It makes sense for them to make a big move too.
But the other big name, and probably the biggest name that was on the board, Mikko Rantanen, who was one of the prized acquisitions of the Carolina Hurricanes, goes to Dallas, and Dallas sends back, listen to this haul, center Logan Stankoven, a 2026 1, a 2028 1, a 2026 3, and a 2027 3.
Jesus.
4 high draft picks, 2 number ones, and a center prospect.
So they're in the partridge in the pear tree, and they got the whole thing.
As Dallas is, 84 points right now, 8 back of Winnipeg, who is, again, starting to run and hide as they've now opened up a 10-point lead over Vegas for the top record in the West and are now tied with Washington for the best record in the NHL.
Wow.
As, Ovi gets another one today and is 9 away from Gretzky.
Yeah, I saw the empty netter. How the hell did he do that?
I mean, it's Ovi. He's 40 years old. Do we actually, the fact that he's not only going to break this record, he needs 9 in their final 20 with the pace he's on, and the fact that he's got that the Capitals are staring down a President's Trophy, and the fact that Ovi coming back this strong after that injury that we talked about a few,
month and a half,
just a few weeks ago here, or a couple of months ago, I should say, and the fact that he's, again, at 39, coming up on 40, could play 2 more years at this high level. He could still give you 30 goals at 42 years old at this point.
With the way he's playing right now, I'll be honest with you. I think he's going for it and then going to be like, done.
If they get it this year, yeah. But there's part of me that thinks if they don't, does he maybe come back and take another run? And the fact that he's going to be so close to, if not breaking Gretzky's record, does he maybe stay around 2 more years and go for 1,000?
I wouldn't put anything past him. Just with the run he's been on, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in hockey, Jim. And I don't pay as close attention as you do, but I don't think I've ever really seen anyone go on this kind of run, especially somebody at 40.
He's 114 away from 1,000.
I thought you said he was 114 years old.
I mean, he just looks that because he's got more gray in that beard than color.
Yeah. Still one of the funniest ESPN commercials of all time. What are you doing? Some late night filing? Yeah, thought you were a Russian spy.
Takes on a whole new precedent in the last few weeks, doesn't it?
Bro.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. But, Yeah, with 20
got-
with most teams only having about 20 games to go, it's going to be very interesting for a stretch drive.
Yes. And honestly, this is going to sound callous, and I don't mean it to, but with the limited attention the NHL gets now anyway, this will be something that carries them through the mainstream. Is someone actually going after Gretzky? So, real quick before we go into the third topic, 76-70, Cavaliers 2:24 left and counting in the third quarter.
As this would be 14 in a row. And I believe it would actually, from the numbers we were talking about last week, I think this would actually put them, well, first of all, it would actually put them 17 and a half up on Milwaukee in the division. And that would actually give them 64 games. So I would want to say that they can clinch the Central Division as early as Thursday.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, can I just say that you said in the show that DeAndre Hunter was a bench piece?
I mean, at least that's where I thought he was going to be.
He's been
To be able to be relief. I mean, I got a feeling when the playoffs come around, I think he could end up being that bench piece because to be able to give the second unit and be able to actually start. I could see them running Strus out there, even though Strus is their best, sixth man. But I could actually see them where they possibly move them this way when you have some of the starters get the rest. You've still got the guy who can light it up.
I think what you're going to see is like now, if you notice, whenever Garland and Allen, whenever they sub out, it's usually Garland and Allen go off the floor. Mobley and Donovan stay, and you fill in Ty Jerome, Hunter. I think that's what they're going to be doing, and that is scary if they do that. But let's get to topic number 3 as we're an hour and 2 minutes in. We're setting records. It's our longest hat trick. If I could say something about this real quick.
Go ahead.
Congratulations to the regular season conference champions, led by athletic director Dr. Ed Scott and head coach Anthony Hardaway. The Memphis Tigers have won their regular season conference championship. So, Ed, not that you'll ever see this, buddy, but tip of the cap from the wise guys. Glad to hear it. It was pretty cool pictures, too.
We saw some teams in what they call the mid majors, or a lot of people think of as the one bid conferences, punch their tickets on the men's side, but we saw some significant teams punch their tickets earlier today on the women's side. So just from what I've actually seen on the men's side, Lipscomb won the Atlantic Sun, High Point won the Big South, their first conference championship, and Drake wins the Missouri Valley, only to actually get smacked around by Kendrick Lamar.
Have you seen all the different songs they've put the dancing at the beginning of the song, too?
No, because I don't actually listen to either one of them.
I sent you one today. They did it to Manamana.
That I could actually be, because I've actually been listening to nothing but the new Spirit Box for the last 48 hours.
I mean, everything from that to the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, the closing song, to Jim, Safety Dance.
Because we can dance with our hands in our pants. But over on the women's side, we saw some significant names punch their tickets. Now, we did actually see George Mason win the Atlantic 10 and UNC Greensboro win the SoCon, and San Diego State won the Summit League, but South Carolina won the SEC, Duke won the ACC, UCLA won the Big 10, and TCU won the Big 12.
Wow.
Now,
TCU.
Keep in mind, 2 years ago, TCU didn't have enough players, I think, because of injury to play in the Big 12 championship for the women. And 2 years later, they are now Big 12 conference champions, as well as also they've got an outside shot with how some of the cards fall of maybe getting a number 1 seed, as they are 8th in the country right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the number 1 seeds in this the women's tournament are going to be South Carolina is going to get one of them. I think if UConn wins their conference, they're going to get one of them, just because it's UConn. Not that they haven't played well, but just because it's UConn. I think it is an outside shot that TCU gets one. And the 4th, I don't think UCLA's got a good enough record to get a 1 seed, even though they won the Big Ten tournament.
I mean, they're ranked 4th right now in the country at 27-2, and they beat USC, who is number 2. I'm actually also stunned with the fact that you got number 1 Texas, who is number 1 in both the AP and the coaches, that South Carolina winning as number 5 over Texas in that. Not only do you actually take away their number 1 ranking going into conference tournaments, or, as some of the other tournaments are still going here, but do you also basically have knocked them out of a number 1 seed?
No, because I didn't realize Texas was number 1 in the country. I think what you're going to see, your number 1 seeds are going to be Texas, South Carolina, UCLA, and probably TCU.
I think UConn is there, but you also really can't count out Notre Dame. Even though Notre Dame plays in the ACC, and Duke won the ACC.
I think
Duke's women are ranked 11th right now. I don't see them making that big of a jump.
No, Notre Dame and UConn will be on the 2 line. I think Duke will be on a 3. Which that next week is going to be fun.
With the men, according to ESPN's Joe Lunardi with bracketology, from what actually was updated here at 6:25 p.m. Eastern today, the top overall seed he has is Auburn. The first team out is Boise. The last team in is Xavier. He also has the last 4 in: San Diego State, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Xavier. First 4 out, he has Boise State, Texas, Colorado State, and North Carolina after Duke waxed North Carolina on Saturday night. He has his 4 number 1s as Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida. And this actually goes before a lot of the major conference tournaments will start as early as Tuesday. His two lines are Texas Tech, Alabama, Tennessee, and Michigan State. The 3 line, he has Kentucky, Iowa State, St. John's, who won their first Big East regular season championship last week since 1985, and Texas A&M. And to round out, he has the 4 line of Clemson, Wisconsin, Purdue, and Maryland.
Usually he's good, though. He's far better at his job than Kuiper is at his. Did you see I used the word Kuiper and pontificate in the most recent blog post? I was proud of myself with the thesaurus.
Very, very, yeah. Did you pull out your Stephen A. Smith thesaurus?
No, it came off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
I'm just very intrigued here because of some of the matchups that Lunardi has with this, because the first and second round games will be down at Nomo Romo Fijo, and I'm trying to score myself some tickets for that weekend. The only thing I actually had an issue with was Florida playing this well was originally on the 2 line and we're going to be in Cleveland. Now they're on the 1 line, and he right now has them as the 1 in the West going up, but opening up in Raleigh. So he's got in Cleveland, he has Louisville and Georgia as a 7-10, Tennessee and Central Connecticut as a 2-15. And that actually would be in the East region. In the South region, he's got number 2 Michigan State against 15 Furman. This is the one I would probably pay good money to see. Number 10 Baylor, number 7 Marquette.
Ooh.
And I am a big Marquette and Shaka Smart fan.
Yes.
That would be an excellent consolation prize for me, knowing that Florida would not be in Cleveland.
I would break out my Marquette hat for the show next week if you got to see them.
And he actually and the other, I mean, at least for me, he's also got Mizzou against McNeese uh, as as a 5-12 matchup in the West in Providence, where oh no, that wouldn't actually be a play-in, but Mizzou took it on the chin against Kentucky at home yesterday, so they're falling.
Yeah, next Sunday night's going to be fun. If I could sneak one college football thing in while we're talking college, congratulations to the new head coach at Bowling Green State University, 1995 Heisman Trophy winner from the Ohio State University, Eddie George. Phenomenal job at Tennessee State and then taking the Bowling Green job. May it never come to being the Buckeyes coach, but
Where was he also heavily rumored to have gone?
Ohio State, if they would have lost in the tournament. If they would have lost to Tennessee, there was a lot of speculation he was going to get the Buckeye job.
Wasn't there somebody else that came up?
For the Buckeye job or for him?
No, for Eddie George. I'm trying to remember who else was coveting him. Wasn't it an NFL job, like a coordinator or something?
I mean, there was scuttlebutt about the Titans were going to bring him in, but that's
who I was thinking.
Yeah, it was either the Titans or Vrabel was going to take him to New England. Yeah, next Sunday's going to be fun.
Just when I look at and how he's got this broken down, he's got 13 of the 18 teams in the SEC getting in. He's got 10 in the Big Ten getting in, 8 in the Big 12, 5 in the Big East, and only 3 in the ACC.
Jesus.
But I mean, it's, ACC has actually turned themselves into a football conference, and then it's Duke and really everybody else, in college basketball, and just
they beat the hell out of Carolina.
I mean, that was one where Carolina made a comeback, but it's just, what a job by John Shire this year.
He has done a phenomenal job. He really has. We thought it'd be a desolate place after Coach K, and he has done a phenomenal job. I have to give credit where credit's due.
I'm sorry.
Was he on Krzyzewski's staff?
Yes. Yeah, he was Krzyzewski's top assistant. And that's when Krzyzewski walked away, it just naturally matriculated down to him. Another name that actually is getting thrown around here, that if you see an opening in a Power 5 conference school, his name is eluding me right now, but with the job he's done at Cleveland State, their head coach could be the next Dennis Gates to possibly move on, as they've now clinched 3 consecutive 20-win seasons, and they open up Horizon League play as the 2 seed tomorrow night down at the Wolstein Center. So I will probably be watching that, with the fact that there's no new NCIS tomorrow.
Very nice. Hopefully that'll be on ESPN Plus. I'll actually watch that one.
Yes.
Tomorrow night is a W2 night.
We'll have more about that maybe in the second half here.
Oh, absolutely, in the second half. But what do you say we hit halftime there, James? Speaking of 84-77 Cleveland, just started the fourth quarter. Kuzma got away with a push. 84-79.
And we're going to get out, and we will actually see you guys here in a little bit. We'll come back with a short blast. We'll come back with the YZ translator, and we'll get out of here, as it's going to be way too nice, and it's going to be some really good sleeping weather for both of us here in the next couple of days. So we kind of want to take advantage of it.
See you in a few. And we're back.
Needed an extra minute or two kind of scrolling through Instagram. I actually had to watch a video of Kelly Kapowski making her version of a hot toddy set to Michael Bublé music, where she's taking a little too many sips off the sauce while she's doing it. So my night's basically been made.
Agreed. But real quick, so after getting it to within 4, the Cavs are back up 14.
Yeah, with 6 minutes to go.
So speaking of sips off the bottle, we're getting closer and closer to the debut of the W2 podcast, James. That which you are the technical producer and I am the roadie / equipment manager. The only difference is I'm going to be a topic of conversation because I am the spouse of one of the hosts, and that's kind of going to be their thing. I have requested that I clear everything that goes on about me on the show.
You want to actually play your Hulk Hogan creative control card?
Yeah, only because I'll take the fucking laptop away. I told him that too.
I was just gonna say that the next episode of the W2's TBD.
Is that a lightsaber?
It's the second time we brought that up tonight. Not on this show. Once right before we went on the air.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah. So real quick, we are coasting. Well, I don't want to say coasting. We are 6 minutes away from the 54th win in 64 games for this team. Dude, I'll say it again. We said it 1,000 times. We're not going to get into any more than this. I didn't fucking see this coming.
And it'd be the second time this year that they've actually had 14 or more, and the third time this year already that they've actually that they've ripped off 12 or more.
This is crazy. So here, real quick, they're putting this up on ESPN. The Cavs bench, the NBA ranks right now. They're 6th in points per game at 39.6. They're first in everything else. 3-point field goal percentage, overall field goal percentage, defensive efficiency. Listen, we knew that
Mike, you need to stop your train of thought because then you're going to be cutting into the segment.
Sorry, but we knew PJ Pickleringer what needed to be replaced.
Rusty cunt bucket.
We each got one tonight.
You're gonna make me start, combing through episodes looking for a Bickerstaff, super cut.
I think that goes in the Hall of Fame next year for the Wiseies. All the different names you gave.
It's the early leader in the clubhouse. It's bad enough that I actually have to do super cuts for the Wisey Chronicle, and God knows what kind of video I'm gonna have to cut for the W2s.
No, our next 6-pack is what our favorite JB Bickerstaff nickname on the Wise Guys is.
I will take that under advisement.
Let's get to the blast, sir.
No, I don't want to open a freaking image.
Go to the hole, Isaac.
Hey, in case you haven't noticed, and judging by the attendance, you haven't.
Hey, real quick, I keep plugging the blog on here, but did you see I used that line in the Rockers one?
I didn't actually catch the Rogers one just yet.
So the Rockers one, I put, if you didn't see what they were like, and judging by the attendance back in the day, you didn't. Let's get to the blast, my friend, because a part of it's going to make me want to jump off a bridge. Why don't we start right off the beginning here with Joey Logano? That was something you told me you were into today. But real quick, Joey Logano, the former driver of the One Main Financial NASCAR car.
Now, was it Sprint Cup or was it Nextel Series?
Nextel Series.
Okay. Which I actually watched part of that race on Saturday. But Joey Logano had himself a day at Phoenix today. Lap 34, there's a restart coming, and Logano he started second. He started on the outside of row one, had the lead going into this restart, and then gets flagged for a violation on the restart. The rule is at Phoenix, no part of your car, tire, fender, if a single inch of your car is below the yellow line on a restart before you hit and the entire car has to be past the start finish line, it's an automatic drive-through penalty. So Logano immediately dives to the inside, goes below the yellow line on the restart, and immediately gets flagged for a pass-through penalty. Goes from first to 37th.
Jesus.
And finished 12th on the day.
Damn it, Joey.
And was even more entertaining is him actually yelling, "No way, no way, no how," in a pretty historic, event, because Christopher Bell became the first NASCAR driver to win 3 straight races since 2021, and he held off Denny Hamlin by 0.049 seconds at Phoenix. So 3 races this year. Christopher Bell won Daytona. He won last week at Circuit of the Americas in Texas. He's now, actually, I take that back. He did not win Daytona. But he but again wins at Phoenix.
Who won Daytona?
William Byron. So Bella's won at Atlanta, Circuit of Americas in Texas, and now at Phoenix.
I miss the days of Dick Trickle and Martin Truex.
Everybody's favorite driver, Dick Trickle.
Oh, speaking of NASCAR, did you see Dale Jr. did a dynasty on NCAA with College of with Charlotte?
Yeah, that I did see.
Championship. It's a beautiful fucking thing.
Michael, what is on ESPN when they actually put the score up there? What is Charlotte's initials?
Shaw. Oh, are we going back there again? Are we? Remember, it exists.
But it's a myth.
It's a myth. The scary part is you and I know exactly when to do that. By the way, just real quick, the lead's 20.
As I'm missing the AEW pay-per-view tonight, where Hangman Page and MJF had a physical match tonight, one of the opening matches on the show, where apparently the two have actually tried to legitimately kill each other, according to the storyline the last few weeks. MJF tried to light Hangman Page on fire last week.
Interesting. So getting into the second one, which is more my thing, paging Dr. Hawkeye Pierce to the greater New York area. The Mets and Yankees have hit some serious injury issues coming into spring training. My phone hit the dirt. Sorry, hang on a second. We are now 18 days away from opening day in Major League Baseball. And today we find out that Carlos Mendoza announces to the journalist in Port St. Lucie that Francisco Alvarez has the Jim Thome special, or as we like to call it, the broken hamate bone in his left hand. He will undergo surgery and be out 6 to 8 weeks. And listen, Alvarez worked all off season, and remade his swing. Had a better path to the ball, was hitting for more contact. Of course, that little dude hits the ball a mile when he hits it anyway. Also, the Mets are dealing with Sean Manaea being hurt, Frankie Montas being hurt. And let me tell you, they're not nearly as bad off as the New York fucking Yankees. Jim, now I know you hate them, and I do too. But here's some of the dudes that are hurt. Garrett Cole is down, and it sounds like it's TJ time. Giancarlo Stanton has had multiple injections in both elbows. What the fuck did he do? I don't even want to know. Luis Hill, who was he's the reigning rookie of the year. He's out for an extended period of time. Goldschmidt is trash. They have other injuries in the pitching rotation, and Soto's a Met. If this thing kicks off the way I think it's gonna, the defending American League champions are going to be out of it by May 1st.
I mean, it's certainly looking that way. I mean, especially as loaded as that division is with Baltimore. Toronto on the come up.
The Red Sox have reloaded. I think Bregman and Devers in the middle of that lineup are going to be fucking scary.
And you can never count out Tampa in that division either.
Because they're scrappy as shit.
Even though they're going to be basically displaced this year.
Yeah. On top of that, just in general, DJ LeMahieu's hurt too. Spencer Strider coming back from TJ, finally through live batting practice. Jurickson Profar, which is one of their big off-season acquisitions, he jammed his left wrist, got a bone bruise. They think he'll be ready by opening day. But here's the one I think is going to hurt them the most, and that is catcher Sean Murphy is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks with cracked ribs. Which, yeah.
And the reason I cracked ribs before, and it's bringing back all kinds of bad memories.
Exactly. And the reason I say it's going to be bad is Travis d'Arnaud's in Los Angeles now. He's with the Angels. So your backup who had backstopped the team to a World Series and helped you win a World Series is gone. You're not going to have Acuna until May, June, depending on the knee. There's a bunch of different ones. For instance, Ohtani's not going to pitch. Did you see that?
I started to see something like that.
He just started rethrowing bullpen sessions. Michael Kopech, forearm tightness, precursor to TJ. And of course they have Miller, who's the one that got hit in the head with the line drive. So, dudes dropping left, right, and center at spring training. Wouldn't be spring training in Major League Baseball. Dudes weren't dropping left, right, and center. To be very honest.
It's the only thing that we're actually missing is who's going to be, the one guy who's actually going to end up missing basically half the season for the preseason, for the preseason injury that we always get coming out of spring training. We always see one massive injury coming out of NFL training camp. Yet there's always one.
I think the one that's going to be the toughest is going to be Garrett Cole. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I got to stop throwing shade. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. That's not what I'm about. The only time I've ever laughed at an injury was when he hurt his elbow after the sticky stuff got taken away. Because that was just karma.
Was it Eric Sims sticky tech?
Did you see the golf thing he did the other day?
Was that, can a pro golfer, hit a baseball or something?
No. That was Sim is on the tee with some of his buddies, takes a full rip, made a good sound. The fucking thing burrowed into the ground about a foot in front of him.
That I did not see. I will have to check that out the second we get off the air tonight because I'm a little bit behind on a couple of momentum vids.
It was on his personal TikTok. It was hilarious. If you would open TikToks, I would have sent it to you. But it's not worth me taking the extra 2 seconds to do that. Tristan just scored. So let's end our evening speaking of one of our new favorite people, and that is Charles Barkley. Now, don't get me wrong. We've all loved Chuck for a long time. Hell, I'd even go to Galveston if he told me to. But the ESPN rant was fucking beautiful.
For those who missed, Chuck and Shaq got into it on Inside the NBA a few nights ago, where Shaq had brought up how the Lakers had won 8 in a row, and essentially Chuck scorched the earth inside that TNT studio and said that the Lakers have had 2 good weeks, where the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder have had 6 good months, and he ain't wrong.
No, he's not.
And then publicly acknowledged the nepotism between LeBron James and his son, with how poorly that's been handled.
And let me say this. Has the nepotism part of this been handled poorly? I agree with you 100%. But I will say this. If his last name wasn't James and he was doing the same thing at 55, the pick, no one would fucking care. So for as much as, yeah, he was drafted because he's LeBron's kid. Agree with you 100%. 100%. He wouldn't be under this much scrutiny if he wasn't LeBron's kid. And we saw that come to a head just the other night. And I don't ever say this. Stephen A handled that with some class, because he made it very clear that was not the basketball player that came up to him. That was the father that came up to him. As one, and it has gone final in Milwaukee. Cleveland won 12, Milwaukee 100. The Cleveland Cavaliers have won 14 in a row for the second time this season.
But the thing is I actually heard this on a I can't even think of what they call it now, because it's not CBS Sports Radio.
Is it fucking FanDuel?
No. Infinity. That's what they call it now. It's now part of like the Infinity Sports Network. But they actually said I can't remember who it was, but they actually said whether it was the father or the player, he's got to do some soul searching, because you cannot corner a journalist like that.
I wholeheartedly disagree. Wholeheartedly disagree. Do you want to know why I wholeheartedly disagree? Because that same man had fucking Odell's back when his daddy was doing shit and getting Baker thrown out of town. I'm not saying a journalist. I'm saying him. Because I wouldn't say the word journalist when it comes to Stephen A. Smith.
He's still technically a journalist, and as a kind of a brethren, even though I've not been, in that realm directly in over 20 years. It's 20 years actually. Yeah, it's now officially over 20 years. But like, what if it goes south afterwards and you end up with a Ryan Leaf or a Joel Embiid? You'd never hear the end of it.
I agree. But the one thing I will say is this: Stephen A. Smith is a journalism as Deshaun Watson is to respectable women treating. And your people's eyebrow tells me that you don't think I'm wrong.
I mean, I do agree with some of what Stephen A. says. There's a lot more that I don't.
Exactly.
Especially when he's taking his lumps when the Cavs are beating the Knicks by 40 on national TV.
Right. Do you know who? Oh, I'm going to tell you, I'm flipping through YouTube. Bobby went upstairs with Steph today to take a nap. And I'm flipping through YouTube while I'm playing the video game. Do you know who the biggest advocate for the fucking Cavs is in the podcast world? Carmelo Anthony.
For my money,
I'm saying it's a good thing.
I will die on this sword. Carmelo Anthony might have been the most overrated player not named Ben Simmons in the NBA in the last 20 years.
Right on the nose.
Outside of what he did at Syracuse, What the fuck did Carmelo Anthony ever do in the NBA? Except score a lot of points and choke in a lot of playoffs.
I think we can go to band practice.
I'm here so I won't get fined.
See, I think we can go to band practice now because I can't say anything about that.
Would you shut up and just push the button already?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YZ Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the YZ Translator, the favorite segment of the night because it is the final segment of the night. It has now become the cult-like following of the Wise Guys, as the YZ Translator has given us our biggest viewed video of all time. And no, we're not saying his name. But it also has brought us the part of the night where Mike has no idea what the hell is going on, and that is the YZ Chronicle. So, James, if you would please, the Chronicle, sir.
Michael,
Why was that not the one for episode 69?
because tonight is the 69th YZ Translator.
Nice. Oh my god. Oh, that means after next week there's another supercut.
Yeah, the supercut went up, so this is actually now number 2 of 10. So we've still got some time. I mean, probably come draft night, we'll actually be ready for another supercut if we do a translator that night. Although it's kind of, it's law at this point that we kicked it off during the draft 2 years ago. We have to do it on draft night.
Oh, I'm thinking 4 horsemen for the draft.
By the way, I'm not sure if he's going to see this. Happy early birthday wishes to friend of Wise Guys and former guest Patrick McGuire, whose birthday will be tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Patrick.
And I'll be in touch hopefully sometime tomorrow if you do see this eventually.
I'll reach out as well. We got to get him back on.
Yeah.
The way this season's going, we got to get him back on.
Absolutely.
So it is incumbent upon me to give James the first name in the 69th translator. By the way, it's getting that name the entire night.
Bruh.
And James, your first name in tonight's YZ Translator. And I would like some insight as to why this decision was made. Your first name in tonight's translator is Myles Garrett.
I mean, we talked about him for almost 30 minutes at the top of the show. Again, what can we really say now that we didn't bring up very early on in the hat trick during the first part of the show? All the respect in the world for the guy. Again, it's going to be extremely, extremely interesting to see, first of all, how the contract breaks down when those numbers come out, and then the reports that may come out about who blinked. And if it turns out that Garrett blinked and the Browns threw extra money and called his bluff, how tumultuous could next year be knowing that this happened? And especially if things get ugly with the season.
You mean when things get ugly?
I mean, when Lamar did it, the Ravens were still in a contending spot. I don't know if we can really vilify or praise Miles until we actually know what happens in 6 weeks with the draft. But at this particular point, again, it's interesting. Whose punk card got pulled?
We're going to end up having an entire show about that. What you got for me, brother?
Michael, your first entity, I will say tonight in the YZ translator, it goes from bad to worse, and yet somehow still got worse. Your first name tonight are the Dallas Mavericks.
I didn't know Rachel Phelps was an actual person. Did you hear this? Did you hear this?
With what happened last night?
No. Mark Cuban sold the team to a female owner, the real estate woman. She wanted to open a casino to go next to the arena. Texas told her no. She said, "Then I'll move the team." And look what the first move was. Bye, Luca. She's going to get it. She wants to move the team to Vegas.
First of all, the league would never allow that to be able to go from, even though Vegas is coming on, you're never going to take the third largest market, TV market that's not, again, right behind LA and New York, and throw them in Vegas, who's in the 20s.
Is it because Chow Chow will have to eat actual dog food? Dude, the parallels are scary. Nico Harrison is Charlie Donovan. Who's our head coach? Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd has now become Lou Brown. And dare I say, Kyrie Irving is Roger Dorn.
Jason Kidd's girlfriend doesn't even know what white walls are.
Oh, I don't know. Somebody did it on TikTok, and they said, "We think Major League is happening in real life." And I went, "Oh, gee, I wonder what baseball team." And she throws out the Mavericks, and I went, "Oh."
They had only 7 healthy players when they lost to Phoenix last night.
Nico Harrison was at Texas A&M game. They were chanting "Fire Nico."
There was one point when the Cavaliers beat them by 95 the night after the Luka trade, they were down to their 5th string center.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, they're running out of G League players to be able to call up.
Mm-hmm. And they've used Kyrie the most over the last 6 weeks that he's ever been using his entire career. And now he's out with the ACL till next season.
Yep. The Mavericks entered the game with only 9 available players, 3 who suffered injuries on Sunday afternoon, 2 on the same play.
Oh, fuck.
And then 2 more weren't available midway through the 4th quarter because they were on minute restrictions after recently returning from extended injuries.
I vote that every time we talk to Dallas Mavericks, we play Wild Thing. And we both look at each other in the camera and go, "I hate this fucking song."
I mean, it's and yet somehow, some way, even after losing 5 in a row, they are still in the play-in tournament.
They won't be by the end of next week.
Yeah, I mean, they're a game and a half up on Phoenix right now.
Speaking of shit shows.
Yeah. And what we talked about it last week about how the Chicago Bulls were 12 games under 500 and we're sitting in the 10 spot in the East, and the Mavericks now completely bucking the trend as they're the only sub 500 team that's in the play-in tournament. Typically, you don't find that in the West.
No, not at all.
I mean, They're only a game under 500, but still, and yet somehow, some way, they've got a point differential that's in the black.
They were blowing teams out at the beginning of the year, though. That's more what they were before. So, James, to close out your portion of the 69th translator, what were you going to hit?
I'm trying to find something here.
Let me do one on my own.
You know, morons.
I don't think she's listening. So, James, your second and final name in the 69th translator. Is new Pittsburgh Steeler DK Metcalf.
Go fastest guy in the NFL? Prove it when you're actually playing on frozen grass that used to be turf, by mid-October. At least in Seattle, it was just wet. Now you're actually wet and sloppy. Yeah, somebody's numbers are coming way down next year.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Geno was a career retread who turned himself into a starter. Pittsburgh still doesn't have an answer under center. I don't care if it's Justin Fields or not.
No, I agree. Until he proves himself, I'm with you 100%. I think he's their better option. Being younger, a little more cost effective, and still having the talent. Yes, I think he's their better option. Oh, excuse me. What do you got for me to close the door, sir?
Mike, your second and final name, the fourth overall in the translator tonight. We talked about him off air and earlier this week, and I'd like to get your thoughts and your honest thoughts about the entire body of work. That would be brand new WWE Hall of Famer, the total package, Lex Luger.
Long overdue. You're talking about a guy who was a main eventer at both companies. One of my favorite matches of all time is when the Outsiders and Hogan faced him, Sting, and Macho Man. Was it Bash at the Beach?
Bash at the Beach 95. And before you actually continue, the WWE just started a WCW Vault channel as one of the subsections on their own YouTube page. And you can go back and watch all kinds of old WCW stuff that's been remastered and now in 4K on their YouTube channel if you don't have the WWE network. They put up all kinds of classic matches and full pay-per-views.
Really?
Yes. I actually watched that match on Friday, and then I followed it immediately up by watching Sting and Hogan at Starrcade 97.
So let me finish my thought, and then I'll tell you the match I'd want to watch. I don't remember what year it was. It was 98 or 99, but long overdue. To see the work he's done with DDP has been amazing. At the end of the day, probably going to be best known for what happened outside of the ring, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that before I did.
Yeah, he's not Benoit, obviously, because that was horrific. But he's admitted to his side of it. But again, going back to what I said first, definitely overdue. I mean, this guy helped carry WCW for many years, and really was misused in WWE. I don't think Vince knew what he had. But I mean, well, his big debut is when he slammed Yokozuna, right? On the Intrepid.
Well, actually, not so much because remember he came in as the narcissist, and that was the start of the face turn, and then the Lex Express and the Summer of Lex and everything. I don't really think it was the fact that he got misused. I think that they tried to strap a rocket to him, but the problem was it was the exact same time that Bret Hart became the greatest wrestler on the planet.
That's true. At the time Lex was trying to get the rocket up his ass, Bret Hart became the excellence of execution. See, I remember some things.
Yep. I do like the fact that he owned up to it. Did you see where he got the announcement from Cody?
Yeah, I did.
That was very, especially with how, as Larry Full, Lex's real name, said, and I actually didn't even realize that DDP had legally changed his name several years ago from Paige Falkenberg to Dallas Page. So it kind of makes sense. But just the fact that Larry Full's able to get out of his chair, his wheelchair, and we all thought it was the steroids or something, but I guess it was a training accident. How I never knew that, and the fact that he's basically been crippled for the last, I want to say they said it was '07, so we're coming up on 18
years.
19 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing with Liz was terrible. But I gotta say, okay, let's play fantasy here, fantasy booker for a minute. And completely deserved to be in. Not so much for his WWE run, WWF, where he never won a title, but 3-time WCW champion. One of the greatest Nitro victories in history was when he beat Hogan and racked him in Detroit. When Hogan was, and even though he lost the belt to him, 3 days later at Sold Out. I went back and watched that match the other day, not on the WWE YouTube channel. I think I had to find it on Daily Motion. Who inducts him?
DDP. I don't think there's anybody else who could do it but DDP, unless you bring Bischoff back. Who?
Sting.
Ooh. Yeah.
If it's not Sting, then what's the point? DDP would be nice, but DDP inducted Jake Roberts, and especially with all the work that he's done with them, the fact that Lex and Sting basically with Flair carried WCW through the Monday Night Wars for a good chunk of it. Because remember, the first Nitro was Lex showing up after walking out of his WWE deal at the Mall of America in Minneapolis.
That's right.
And that's where the Monday Night Wars officially began.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think of Sting because I know he's still got a thing with
AEW, yeah.
With AEW going on. But yeah, no, I think it's got to be Sting. If it's not Sting, it's DDP. Just because if he stands to give his speech, he's standing because of DDP. And the match I want to go back and watch is the DDP Goldberg match. When he jackknifed DDP with one arm. Here's why I want to watch that match. We're at Creedy's house in Richmond Heights. We thought Goldberg was going down when he took the diamond cutter. When he jackknifed when Goldberg jackknifed DDP with one arm, Nick fell over and landed on the couch, just like convulsing. Because we were so tired of Goldberg.
As much as we love some of the product right now, and I actually haven't watched AEW in several, in probably about almost 2 months here. I just actually haven't really watched any of the product. And I'm not actually saying that WWE is getting fresher. It's a little bit easier to access and go back and watch with Netflix now, at least for Raw, and especially the fact that it's Mania season. But it's cool again. It's like, the NWA is actually putting on really good shows anymore. the drama with AEW going on. They're actually saying, could they possibly pivot? We saw some guys get released in WWE anymore. But I think this was the right call for WWE to create this WCW channel, because putting it on the network and only putting certain things there or slowly uploading things, you got to admit, even if you were a diehard WWE Attitude guy, some of the stories in WCW were some of the best we have ever seen, even though the final result shit the bed. Nash beating Goldberg with Scott Hall's shock stick. The shit botched ending from Nick Patrick in that Sting Hogan match, which a lot of people said was the catalyst of the downfall of WCW. The finger poke of doom, enough said. But that entire 18-month buildup with Sting not having said a word, and then Sting and Luger jumping over the NWO after Goldberg is actually, got the rocket up his ass, and even after losing the belt, Hogan bringing back the red and the yellow on that one Nitro that nobody saw coming. It was just so good. And even if you go back to the early 90s, even before Hogan got there, with a lot of the old, WCW with the Horsemen, the original Horsemen, and then Luger winning the world title and, running with Mr. Hughes and Harley Race for the better part of a year.
Jesus, I remember that. WCW was entertaining. The Goldberg run was great. The Sting going to the Crow was phenomenal. The NWO got a little diluted when you had the Wolfpack and all that good stuff. Well, the Wolfpack had the greatest friggin' entrance song ever.
Yeah, it's, when you go NWO Wolfpack, NWO Hollywood, and then you do the finger poke of doom and you bring all that back together, it's just, what? At one point it was like 17 guys.
Mm-hmm.
For my money, though, one of the greatest promo lines I've ever heard is all these Johnny-come-latelys, and Eric Bischoff was still selling meat out of the back of a truck in Minneapolis when Hogan joined the NWO that night.
That's right.
I'll always remember that segment for the fact that Hogan had to keep lifting Mean Gene's arm because Mean Gene kept actually having to hold the microphone up there because Hogan wouldn't come down to him, and Mean Gene's arm was getting tired from, and also trying to avoid getting hit with garbage.
Yeah. And that was where you knew Hogan fully bought into the heel thing, because he always went down to Mean Gene's level. Whenever, even into WCW, when he started making him move, you knew he had bought into the heel thing. But next week, James, has a name. It's a named episode.
My boogie shoes.
We gonna boogie with you. As Jim and I do not only the men's dance, but we will do the women's dance as well. Next Sunday night, really not going to be a whole lot of other stuff. We are going to pick our brackets next Sunday night, live on the air, in cyberspace and in pen.
We'll take a look at who got in, who got snubbed out, who actually could be going to the NIT or the CBI. We won't break those down, but really, does the SEC deserve 13 teams like Joe Lenardi predicted? Does the Big Ten get 10? Does the ACC get less than one hand's worth? Who are the four number ones? Who actually got slighted? Who got overcast? Who's got the best path to the Final Four? Who actually's got a legitimate shot to win this thing? Is Auburn that good to be able to run the table? What kind of draw do they get looking for their first national championship? What's going on with the women's game? Who's going to get the four number ones there, as we talked about earlier? Are we actually going to see a South Carolina dynasty again?
It's This tournament's got a lot of intrigue in it. I think last year we were more worried about UConn going back to back and then what Caitlin would do. But this year's got a lot of intrigue because you don't know who's going to do it. You don't know who's got the squad that's going to get through this thing and get a title. So that's going to be an interesting part of the show next week. And then the week after that, good God.
Mike will be talking basically for about 45 minutes straight.
Not going to be a hard thing for me to do. I don't shut up ever anyway.
So that will actually be episode 103. And that actually will be, effectively, we're calling it the Big Rican Baseball Preview
That's
for
104.
2025.
104 is...
You're right. I actually didn't actually update the number.
You made it 102 again, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Groundhog Day was a few weeks ago, dude. There it is. We can't do the Bill Murray thing twice in a year, dude. Not but it's never too early for flapjacks.
God damn it. Now I want pancakes. As I was talking with my mom, I haven't had a fucking burger in 2 months since I saw the doctor. It's like, yeah. What was I watching last night? I was watching a Hallmark movie, and like they're eating like royalty type food. So I want to say it was like jellied eel or something. It's like, I kind of wish it was a donut on a plate instead. And that's like, God damn, I want some donuts right now. I would drive 35, 40 minutes to go to a Tim Hortons and get some Timbits at 9 o'clock.
You hear Tim Hortons is no longer a Canadian company?
I don't believe you.
Would I lie to you about food?
They're still headquartered in Oakville, Canada. They're still part of Restaurant Brands International.
They're not owned by a Canadian company. This guy, he was on one Instagram or something, was talking about how they're not a Canadian-owned company anymore.
Restaurant Brands International also owns Burger King, Popeyes, and Firehouse Subs, and they're still headquartered in Toronto.
Oh, maybe he was wrong.
What is this? It was... I know. Okay, that's what it is. RBI is they're a Canadian American joint multinational company based in Toronto. So that's what they were saying. But the majority control of RBI is a Brazilian company known as 3G Capital.
Hey, real quick, got some breaking news. Apparently, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred and several other owners are pressuring the current owners of the Tampa Bay Rays to sell the team. Stadium drama, of course, because the Trop was destroyed in the hurricane, and they will play this year at Steinbrenner Field, the spring training home of, as Jose Reyes would say, the Yankees. We'll get into that in 2 weeks.
Their new barn's not going to be ready until 2027, or right?
Something like that.
They can fix the roof in time for 2026, but I can't remember if it's 2027 or 2028 because the funding's already been done.
Yeah. But we'll get into that in a couple of weeks. I'll probably end up doing a blog post about that too, because I hate Rob Manfred.
In other news, water's wet, sky's black.
Yeah. But everybody enjoy your daylight savings time.
Time for us to go get that hour of sleep back.
Exactly. We'll see you guys next Sunday when we pick the brackets.